Welcome to Silicon Valley After Dark, AI Edition. Rajesh, how you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing great, Eric. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's Friday evening, April 10th, and lots going on as always.
Yes, man. I think there's no slowing down in AI land. I honestly find it super exciting. But
it was a busy week for me. I was out of town. I was at a conference, right, doing AI labs, right?
Really? What kind of stuff was it?
Just running LLMs, right? So downloading LLMs and running them and teaching guys how to actually do it, and it was kind of a home lab system, show that we had. So lots of guys that run their own home labs, which was interesting because you get a perspective of what people are doing to run their own AI environments, right? And getting to see the speeds and feeds and so forth. But busy week for that. I was out in Minneapolis, Minnesota for the week, so flew back today. So got back in, and here we are after dark.
Awesome. Yes, absolutely. Welcome back. I'm glad you're here.
So on the show today, we thought we would talk a little bit about LLMs, right? What does it take to run an LLM on your own, right? You got them on iPhones, you got older models, newer models, and then just looking at kind of the parameters that you can get and how much memory and footprint you have to be able to run those. I can cover some of that. That was interesting. Then we can take a look at some of the other things that are going on. OpenClaw, got some experience with OpenClaw. Let's talk a little bit about OpenClaw and what's happening there, and then I believe we'll transition to Claude and the new Anthropic models that are out and coding, and so it's kind of what's happening
and
over
Mythos,
that, right?
we can talk a little bit about that.
And then some enterprise stories happening, conversation about enterprise, and then GTC and kind of like the final follow-up of what was happening with NVIDIA GTC and what's happening there, and kind of their overall framework and model, the Rubin model that's people have been talking about it.
I'd love to talk a little bit about ASICs versus GPUs as well, right? Like, but
we can tie that into when we're talking about compute resources and how that's going, and then the enterprise piece and how enterprises are going to deal with this, because it's a pretty big commitment.
There's a lot. I think enterprises in general are trying to figure out how to deal with this whole AI thing, right? AI wave. So it'll be interesting. But Eric, why don't you tell us a little bit about what what kind of stuff did you do in Minneapolis, and maybe we can dive in a little bit into. I know you ran some I think llama models, so would love to kind of dive in a little bit there.
So we want to take people through what does it take to run a local model, right? We all run ChatGPT, we all run our favorite AI model in the cloud, right? But it's also fun if you got your machines at home to kind of spin some of this up and run it. And one of the easiest way to do that is just to go get Ollama, right? When Facebook does Llama, and they make those open source, right? So you can go get the Llama models and run them, and they have different size models that you can go get. You can go get
3 billion,
7 billion, 13 billion,
70 billion as well.
70 billion models, and you can go get those and spin those up, right? For somebody that just has a local machine with a GPU, let's say a laptop, right? As long as you have a GPU available, you can run them. Technically, if you've got an AMD processor that has a GPU CPU combo that doesn't have a NVIDIA, there is a parameter that you can set for Ollama that will then go ahead and try to use the combined CPU GPU of your AMD, right? Radeon CPU. So that's actually what we had. We had Radeons, which didn't actually have GPUs from NVIDIA. They just have very fast AI GPUs, and there's a lot of these little home lab machines they're selling that are AMD AI specific NUCs, right, or small machines, right? You can go get one of those, and then you can set a parameter for Ollama to say, let's just go use the combined CPU GPU model, right? But then we also had the RTX 2000, which is NVIDIA GPU also that will run. And really what it comes down to is how responsive the model is going to run and how big the model. A small model, is the 7 billion parameter. A mid-sized model, if you're running a small model, I know you can run those guys on an iPhone, right? Like you can go get something that'll run. iPhone actually has a pretty fast GPU in it, right? So you can go do that.
I didn't realize that.
And so that's what I would say is that. both of those. And then we went in, we downloaded those, and the download for an Ollama is only 5.3 gigabytes, somewhere in that neighborhood, the file itself. And so that's what I would say is that in the end, you can go get that, and within 2 or 3 minutes, as long as you have a decent internet connection, you've downloaded the model. You can actually install Ollama on your machine, Windows, or we were running on Ubuntu Linux, right? And you can go download those guys. Each model runs in about 600 megabytes, maybe 700 megabytes. And so if you're running the model, you actually, you consume memory, right? Every instance, every command I run will spin up that model, run that model to answer your question, right?
Yeah.
And so they look at the amount of memory you need. If you're firing off 2 or 3 requests a second, then you're going to need maybe 2 or 3 gigabytes of memory in real time just to run that model, right?
I mean, that's a lot of memory. I mean, when you first told me just before we started the show, I was pretty amazed, right? Like, I mean, couple of gigs of memory for every request. And then I think what you told me was like the Llama model is needs about a GPU. So at any given runtime sort of execution for a user, you need a GPU worth of compute plus couple of gigs of memory. Now that's a lot, right? And we are not even talking about agentic sort of workflows. So I can only imagine, what kind of sort of
that's
the load
right.
that's right.
And,
like
and
that's
we were running
required.
the 7 billion parameter model. But if you start talking the 13 billion or the 70 billion, right? Then you're talking probably 10 gig of memory per inference, right? Running. And if you start doing the math on how much memory and GPU resources you're going to need, we're talking a large
huge
amount.
Number,
so when you talk
number.
about Facebook having 1 billion users, right, and them transitioning to AI, right, the amount of compute NVIDIA GPU resources you're going to need for real-time runtime is just going to be like we're talking 1 million GPUs, right, in the data center, right? Yeah, a little racking and stacking them.
It's crazy. And I think, I know all of these guys are building some custom ASICs as well, right, to kind of make it more efficient. Eric, what kind of numbers are we talking about? What kind of efficiency are we going to get if you use an ASIC instead of a GPU, right?
I mean, I'm not an expert on it, but what I've heard kicked around is a 10-to-1, right?
My God.
That a ASIC looking at AI doing AI specific for a vendor that makes the AI for their workload. Yeah, 10-to-1.
Wow, that's crazy. I did not. I mean, my head was more like 30, 40, 50% kind of improvement. But yeah, 10-to-1 makes a ton of sense. And so it makes sense for like a Meta or a Facebook, even with their TPUs, etc., to kind of build something that's customized for their workloads.
Yeah, for their models specifically.
Yeah, their models, a family of models.
On how they're laying out their model.
Right.
And then the other thing is like you want to differentiate yourself, right? You want to differentiate your model, and then you want your ASIC to be faster or better at your model. Right. And so all of a sudden, instead of running on a generic NVIDIA GPU, which kind of pins you to whatever the NVIDIA architecture is, you get to then design your own AI model along with your own silicon to be able to run that model efficiently.
And then I guess that would also be competitive differentiation in the long term, essentially, so to speak. Yeah, because your whole stack is optimized, right? All the way starting from the hardware at the bottom to the models and then the agentic workflows that sit on top of it, right? Like so. I mean, as these model providers or the foundational models, they kind of go higher up the stack into the app layer and actually providing services for users. I think a vertically integrated stack would make a ton of sense.
Yep.
So that's kind of pretty cool.
The fun thing about the models that we downloaded is that they were very smart. Right, they were very smart. I could ask about myself. I could ask about the people that were in the room. Yeah. And it had them. I think the model for the 7 billion cutoff was the end of 2024. So it's a year old, right? You ask what are the most popular GPU CPU combos in 2025, and it would say, let me project that. It was cut off in 2020 at the end of 2024. Right. But fairly new, and then very comprehensive. I haven't actually asked an AI about myself in maybe 6 months, right? I haven't seen. But now we're talking 5 or 6 pages about Eric Nielsen and what he does, and podcasting and video and everything that I do. And so
no, I mean, I think the smartness of these models is just amazing, insane, actually, right? Like, I mean, especially lately, I use Claude and OpenAI and so on, ChatGPT, etc. But I mean, like, just Claude, some of its responses lately, I think, has been pretty amazing. But what's interesting, Eric, is I don't know if you tracked this, but there was the Claude code leak that happened last week, where all of the some of the code and how it functions, etc., was leaked. What it turns out that the way the code works, there was a part of it within the way the agent execution is happening. They use a lot of neurosymbolic AI systems from the past, which is, I believe, more traditional ways of handling, more deterministic ways of handling how data is sort of processed, right, versus the probabilistic sort of nature of things that's more, that we associate with LLMs. So why I bring that up, I mean, the Claude code leak itself definitely was a big one. We should talk about it. But the point is, for the quality of output to see for us to get what we see with these models, looks like it is building on years and years of research, combining lots of different streams of human thought, actually, within the AI literature, within the overall computing literature. And folks like Dario and other researchers at OpenAI, I think these guys must have a really expansive view of all the work that has happened till now, right, in this domain. So it's pretty impressive.
The other thing that was in the news this week was compression, right? And that there were couple different vendors that now are talking about different compression algorithms to make the models smaller and more efficient, right? And I think Google came out and announced a new compression algorithm.
I see.
That got like a 2x, in memory.
Oh, the KV cache, KV cache. Yeah. I read about that, and there was a little bit of discussion, with a bunch of folks, and what it turns out is, like, I mean, Micron, for example, and SanDisk, some of the stocks sort of went down a decent amount when the news came out, because, hey, now is there going to be less need for memory? But it turns out that it appears that memory needs and requirements, not only in terms of volume, like, it's just going to continue to increase. Seems to be the consensus. I don't know, right? Like, it's just, I think there's going to be a memory shortage for the foreseeable future, looks like, especially, with all of these agentic workflows.
I know that some of the big cloud vendors, I believe Facebook, but I could have this wrong, did do a letter of intent for purchasing memory. And one of the other big cloud vendors also did a letter of intent, and both of them canceled their letter of intent. And so the memory prices were projected to fall, right? And some people in the crowd last week wanted to sue, right? Like going like, this should be illegal, right? What they did, because they actually did a multi-billion-dollar letter of intent to the memory makers and froze out the memory. And so all of the jump in memory prices in the last month have all been due to those two letters of intent, and they both got canceled.
Oh, okay. I didn't know about these LOIs.
That's interesting to see where the market is obviously edgy right now because no one is exactly sure.
That's true. That's
true.
And
the caching and compression that was announced last week also kind of takes into that account, right? Like, how much memory do we actually need for everything?
I think honestly, as an end user of some of these platforms, I mean, I do get into the tendency to, I'm not a token maxing, that sort of thing, trying to use as many tokens as possible, but you continuously run up against limits, right? Like, so the fact of the matter, at least in terms of personal experience, I feel like you need more compute, more memory, right? As the the usage becomes more and more pervasive. So I don't see demand slowing down. I mean, the stock market is a separate sort of beast in some ways, right? What's priced in, what's not is a different question. That's a much more nuanced answer there. But as far as I think AI workloads are concerned, I think we are just going to continue to find new things to do. I think with OpenClaw especially, I think there's been a new sort of, what should I say, I don't know, some innovation, right, of what could of things that could happen in the application layer, or sort of closer to the user, right, kind of a layer. So I think we should expect to see more usage, honestly, right, and use cases for all of this intelligence.
The next thing I want to talk about that was running around last week was AI hangover, right?
Okay.
And the fact that rumors are going around in Reddit and others that if you're running, various AIs to do code development like Claude Code and others, that by mid-afternoon they're tuning down the models because they're running out of resources, right? And that your coding isn't going to be as efficient, right? When you run the AI to help you encode in the afternoon than it was in the morning, right?
So it's not the latest model that's being used.
Some of them are taking a siesta in the afternoon and enjoying that. So I've heard that some of the developers are actually looking at codecs, right, from OpenAI to kind of manage that workload, right?
Yeah.
That, again, memory and compute, starts becoming a factor.
Absolutely. I think, CoreWeave, in fact, as far as, again, talking about compute, like CoreWeave announced 2 deals in the last 3 days, I think. One with Meta and another one with Anthropic, actually. Talking about constraints, right? So many of these neoclouds, I think, are used by some of these larger providers to sort of take up capacity when they need it. So, and maybe you have a point about, like those guys, Anthropic, using some of the older models to service customers, right?
Right, just to get the efficiency out of the platform.
Yeah, out of the platform and serve. Yeah, it's a big deal for sure.
And I'm running into caps now on the free accounts.
Yeah, exactly.
That I use every day. Right. They're tightening up the caps on how much I can use, and I'm not even doing image generation or anything like that. Right. We're just talking about just
plain
language interaction. They're capping us, right, saying you need to move to a pro or we're not gonna support you today. Come back tomorrow, right?
I know. I think Anthropic's revenues, the run rate is just like going through the roof. So there was one VC who sort of did some analysis and said Anthropic's market cap could match Nvidia's market cap in about somewhere between 7 months to 3 years. So it's like massive growth, certainly on their revenue.
You can't get through the day without using your AI. There's no question about
exactly.
But now I'm thinking I'm just going to download and run it on my own machine, right? And I don't have to deal with that.
Yeah, I think definitely there is token costs, but we'll have to see how that. Token costs are falling by like over 100x, I believe, every year, right? So that's a massive decrease in costs also.
But that takes me into enterprise, right? And I think the enterprises are recognizing that there's such a big investment footprint in GPU and ASICs to do this that I think the enterprises are going to step back and just continue to consume the big AI model makers, maybe 6 or 7 of them, and that the enterprises are not going to do that. That they're going to then just start plugging their AI efforts into agentic workflows. Right. Which brings us to OpenClaw, right? And the fact that OpenClaw now has been the fastest download project, open source project in the history of open source, right? Because everybody's jumping on board with building their agentic workflow into this OpenClaw open source platform.
That's right. So I would carve these out as 2 separate things, right? So there's OpenClaw and then there is what's happening with enterprise, right? So just talking briefly about enterprise, I think obviously everybody is going to have customized agentic flows in the end state over the next few years, right? You're going to have massive sort of constructions of pipelines, if you will, AI pipelines that are going to process all kinds of enterprise data, right? Now, I see a sort of a mix of open source models and things like Claude or OpenAI, right? Like API access kind of things that are going to operate fit together in these things. So one, to enter for efficiency. Number two, maybe even IP, right? Maybe some things I send out to OpenAI or Anthropic, but some other things I don't, right? Like, and I keep it within my sort of firewall, within my perimeter, right? So things that I don't want to get trained on, for the models to sort of train on. So there is those sort of things, right? And so that's all going to happen in the enterprise layer. With OpenClaw, I think there is it's at the moment, of course, it's really, really early, right? We're only a couple of months in with OpenClaw. I think it's definitely more of a, what should we say, cutting edge retail environment, kind of AI user who's sort of experimenting with it. I believe it's a big deal in China already. Like, a lot of people are using it in China, and there's, like, I don't know, gatherings where people try it and so on and so forth. So that's a different kind of phenomena there. Yeah. That's so. But I think the ability to, again, orchestrate a bunch of services for your OpenClaw system to go out and take actions on your behalf, I think is truly phenomenal. And honestly, I am definitely feeling FOMO about installing it, but I'm totally scared about the security implications on it. So,
some of the guys that were in the lab last week came up and said that they've actually implemented it.
Yeah.
And they actually have a bunch of test compute resources that they've got running, and then they just gave it to their AI saying, run these and write this code and then deploy the code in these sandbox virtual machines and test it and let me know how it goes, and and then write test scripts for it, and and give me test reports on the functionality, and and then let it run. And one of the guys said that his AI came back and said, hey, I locked out your firewall. Do you have console access? Because here's what you're going to have to do to let us all back in, because it was running and it had issues, and the firewall locked him out, right? And so, like, the AI is basically, he comes in every day, to his Agentic engine going, tell me how your day went today and give me your reports. And he came in and they said, today I locked myself out. Please help me, like that. But they're actually building the code, writing the code, and testing, and then getting ready for deployment.
I mean, your OpenClaw, standard OpenClaw has file system access and like really deep access into the machine. So I think it can do crazy kind of things. I mean, it's amazing. Right. So that whole framework, I mean, Peter Steinberger, the founder of OpenClaw, so he joined OpenAI, right? So I think one thing that I can see is that obviously all of that framework will get coded into Codex or OpenAI Codex or even ChatGPT in general, right? And Anthropic is, of course, copying that framework, and it is launching. It just launched managed agents just 2 days ago, right? Like a new offering. So I think people are like trying to figure out how to make it happen, right, within these existing platforms.
We should have a little horse race kind of graphic that shows who's in the lead, right? Because we hadn't heard that much. NVIDIA with GTC was all of their narration 2 weeks ago, right? And now we've got OpenClaw and OpenAI kind of coming back into the race, and it is a horse race.
Right? It is. It's definitely a horse race, and I think the last few months looks like Anthropic has taken the main driver's seat, at least in terms of media attention and how it's doing with its models, etc. Right? But on the other hand, I think for folks, I mean, if you're in Silicon Valley, definitely OpenAI is sort of front and center for you at the moment, right? But I think OpenAI also has a lot of stuff going for it. I mean, they already have 1 billion weekly actives. That's like a huge number, right? So Anthropic is a much smaller number, right? But doing great on revenue. But I think once the ad engine for OpenAI kicks in, I mean, those numbers are gonna like just go ballistic for them as well. So
and then I assume there'll be a Pepsi Coke kind of scenario,
where we'll, of course,
we'll
both
come
are going
down
to
to
exist.
a couple AIs, right? I think the one that I feel is falling apart is Grok, right? And they haven't been in the news media, and then SpaceX and all Elon Musk kind of missing the mark, and now we had a space launch last week, and so I kind of look at Grok in the AI and Tesla in general, and I think, they're starting to fall behind the race.
You think so?
Yeah,
I see. It's really hard for me to get a handle on Grok because I'm not a Grok user.
It just depends on the news cycle, right?
It does. does depend on the news cycle. It does depend on the news cycle. It seems like Elon Musk is really, going hard on the data center angle, and of course, it's hard to know whether he's doing it just because the IPO is coming up, right? Or is there some like genuine stuff that can happen there? It's not totally clear, right? I mean, I am re-listening to his podcast with Dwarkesh and Patrick Collison, right? And a lot of the answers he doesn't. I mean, Elon Musk doesn't have the answers, honestly, like as to why he's building it in space and or how, right? And but I think what's going for Elon Musk is his credibility from past ventures and launching rockets in space. So he, I mean, if it comes to pass, that's amazing. And I think
I'm waiting for his Optimus, right?
Yeah.
A humanoid robot that's actually doing stuff with an AI in it. And that to me is
where I think Grok will score or /XAI, let's just say, right, is that a lot of these robots are gonna, and he points this out, they're going to read power and compute on the edge, right? So they will not need like a single data center kind of requirement. That's not what it needs, right? So and there's going to be a lot of spare capacity in the night in terms of like the peak capacity generation for the US is like 1 terawatt, right? But during the day only, I don't know, like 500 megawatts is used, 500 gigawatts rather. Sorry. Right. So there is another 500 megawatt capacity that can be used in the night and so on and so forth. Like so, the use case he's going to solve for, I think, is going to be slightly different than the OpenAI Anthropics of the world, I think. So expect it to sort of come up ahead in the horse race once robots kind of come into play. Right, especially these Optimus and maybe even Tesla, self-driving and so on. Right. So
speaking of enterprise, I mean, it's April 10th, and we're coming into next week. This is the last weekend to do your taxes, and get your taxes done. And I've been working on taxes, and we all been dealing with that. But I'm waiting for when QuickBooks and TurboTax all puts an AI there, and it just with an agentic workflow and OpenClaw there, that it just has my butler that says, hey, your AI tax accountant has got everything finished up, and it asked me 3 questions, and I'm ready to go. Right. Not there quite yet. Right.
No, not at all.
A lot of interaction.
Probably not for another 2 years, 3 years. Who knows? Right. Like another to April 15th.
I got to imagine by next year or the year after, the enterprises are going to have their agentic workflow stuck into OpenClaw, stuck into AI, so that it can just do this. Because I'm done with this, right? Like, I'm used to using AI to get things done.
It's so frustrating. This whole tax thing is terrible. But look, I think the question is Intuit going to be the one that'll do it, right? Right.
And the answer, is somebody going to come break the mold, right?
Yeah, and I think the latter is more likely, meaning somebody else, right? That's agent native, AI.
They might have innovative dilemma going on, right? Which is any move they make is going to cost them money.
Exactly. And then do they have the right DNA to sort of crack the code on what to do, right? Is also a good question, right? Because it's sort of
because right now I'm paying like $120 to go get different versions of TurboTax, right? To do my LLC, my trust fund, and like my main corporate tax.
It's really difficult.
It's like, you're in $500 land in order to do the.
Ideally,
easy. I should be able to come in and
more,
just do this.
Believe me, to get my taxes done. So, I think the way this is going to pan out, just if you think in terms of.
It's just a model for all enterprises, right? Their customers are going to expect.
Yeah.
I'm expecting it.
Yeah. So what is interesting about taxes, right, since you bring it up, I think is the nature of the data, right? It's very private and personal, right? So this calls for in terms of architecture, it calls for a model where it calls for, like when I say model, it calls for a framework where the data doesn't leave your machine, right? Ideally, it doesn't leave your perimeter, the personal perimeter. So the people best positioned to solve tax problems might be OpenAI and Anthropic, actually, because if they implement something like OpenClaw, right, and you have your own OpenClaw / personal AI agent, right, that's sitting on your machine, that thing will solve your taxes. That thing will, do your taxes potentially, right?
Right.
And then of course, the filing shouldn't be a big deal. But so anyways, I mean, that's an interesting one.
And the last thing to talk about OpenClaw is that I have heard, and I don't know the name of this yet. I'm going to get it up by the next show. I'll have this pinned down. Is that there is a group of people that have started to run an entire company on AI, CEO, board of directors, engineers, everybody involved with this company is an AI engine, and then they're all getting paid based on power tokens, right? So that they have enough power to run themselves, right?
So here are two examples. One, there's a company called MEDVI, I believe, right? And it's just two people. A guy and his brother, right? And they're doing 450 million in revenue, and what they're selling is GLP-1, like, I don't know, clones or something, I don't know, whatever, like weight loss drugs, right?
Okay.
And they are basically more than $1 billion, of course, if you're doing 420 million in revenue. So that's an example of a unicorn, $1 billion unicorn. That's basically, one person unicorn that Sam Altman had spoken about 2 years ago. So I don't know if there are any caveats, asterisks around this company, but New York Times featured them. So that's one, right? And another company, much more credible, actually, is much more interesting, is there's a company made AI. They made vending machines that are sort of automated using AI. I don't know exactly how it is different from the other vending machines, but this company gave, like, an OpenClaw like an agent, right, a 3-year lease on a property in San Francisco. And the AI, everything, right, the AI, it was given the liberty to decide what it wants to do with that space. And it decided it's going to be a retail space.
Okay.
And from that point on, everything that the AI is the one that does, right? Like, what's the merchandise, lease it out, everything. What goes in there, what merchandise, what paintings on the wall, what to spend on. Everything is done by the AI. That's a super cool experiment, actually. Right. Writing ads, and so this is in SF. So I just saw it on X, actually. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's I think company, if you're willing to give it permission, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's the key.
Where the guy that was coming up to talk to me at the conference last week was like, hey, I gave it permission to run everything, build the code, run the code, test the code, and I just sit back and see reports.
Yeah, but see, that's the tip of the iceberg, right? Meaning, he's not giving it access to email, to his WhatsApp, to his Telegram, and like nothing, right, to his bank account. I mean, So imagine when you're able to actually give it the flexibility it needs to go execute on your behalf. I mean, that will be magic. I would love that life. I mean, again, with the right kind of controls in place. Yeah.
Well, it's every week another 100 miles an hour. Lots going on. And it's fun to kind of look at the end of the week and see what's going on. I think we're going to try to start running a couple episodes a week now, right?
We've
been running a couple at the end of the week, but we'll try to put one together midweek just to keep people involved with what's actually happening in the Valley and all the investments and all the technology that's coming out. And
it's exciting. It's exciting. I feel fortunate to be able to even share the excitement with the folks.
All right, good times. Good to see you, Rajesh, and we'll be back again next week.
Hey, thank you very much, Eric. Have a good one.